Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, May 26th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 96 days, the game against Michigan in 187 days. If you're planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at GratefulGriddleOH.com. It is a holiday. We don't typically do shows on these big national holidays like Memorial Day, but we had a lot to talk about this week, so we're going to do one for today. We're going to be welcoming in our buddy Andrew Ellis of BuckeyeHuddle.com. And we just last week did a show on the running back recruiting for the class of 2026. We did a quarterback show before that. So you'll never guess what's up next. Yes, we are talking wide receivers. Wide receiver recruiting, always a fun topic for Ohio State fans. And this is, I think, a little bit of a different time in recruiting because you used to look at these Brian Hartline classes and it was just, who are the top 5 wide receivers in the nation? Okay, he's going to have 3 of them. Well, you can't necessarily do that anymore in the NIL world. So, Andrew, I think last year's class, the 2025 recruiting class, seems like it might be a little bit of a hint at what these classes might look like moving forward. Can you sort of explain how that might be true?
Yeah, so last class, you have the stud at the top with Quincy Porter, who's already kind of flashing in his early part of his career in Columbus. And then you had a couple other guys that are, not in that top 5 national in the power rankings, all that star power. So I think that's probably, as you alluded to, the kind of the realistic approach moving forward as far as how that's going to be. We did see Jeremiah Smith and Mylan Graham, both 5 stars, but that's, not all that common. And I think it's going to be even more uncommon moving forward. And it's kind of set up right now with 4 guys committed. It's set up just like that. You've got Chris Henry Jr. at the top. His ranking fell a little bit just because of some injuries last season, but everybody in the country is recruiting him. Obviously, Oregon is willing to fork out God knows how much money to kind of flip him. His teammate, Caden Dixon-Wyatt, is committed as well. He chose Ohio State over Oregon and USC a few weeks back. They've got a kid from Texas, Brock Boyd, not a huge name, but this is a guy that Brian Hartline has seen and liked for a very long time. He was a TCU commit, and then he's kind of their 3 guy right now. And then number 4 guy, and I don't mean number 4 like in the list or anything, but just kind of local kid, Jaden Ricketts. You don't really hear too much about him, which I don't know if that means anything or not. I think he's maybe just kind of a low key type of recruitment. We see stuff on Twitter all the time about Chris Henry Jr. and about Caden Dixon-Wyatt leading up to his commit. And then with Brock Boyd and with Ricketts, you don't hear a lot. And maybe it's because they're not ranked quite as high, but those are the 4 they got right now. 4 very different type of players. Chris Henry Jr. is like 6'6" and just kind of that freak who can go up and get the ball and pluck it out of the sky. Caden Dixon-Wyatt and Brock Boyd can probably do a little bit of everything. And Jaden Ricketts is a local kid that Ohio State has seen countless times. So they've got 4 in the mix right now. And the class, honestly, it's pretty much set. It wouldn't be a shock at all if come December, these are the 4 guys that they sign. And Phil Knight in Oregon is going to continue to try to do their thing with those 2 top names, the Mater Dei kids that we mentioned. But I would say right now it's probably more likely than not that these are the 4 guys they sign in December, but there's one more kind of local name who's kind of surging up the board. And he's low. I believe his ranking is even lower than any of the guys they've got committed right now. But he's got a 5-star name, so that's always a positive. But Jerquaden Guilford, an Indiana kid, is really surging up the charts right now. I saw Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss just offered him today. Ohio State is very much looking at him. And I think if he wanted to commit to Ohio State, right now, and we all love holiday announcements, right? Shout out to, I think it was Marcellus Jones who committed on Christmas way back when. But I think if he tried to commit to Ohio State today, that Brian Hartline would gladly take him as the number 5 wide receiver in the class. He's about 6'2". He's looking at Tennessee. I've seen some recent crystal ball RPM picks for Indiana, actually. But I genuinely think Ohio State would take him right now. And he's just going to continue to rack in offers as time goes on. So really, if we're looking at national names right now for 2026 or local names, he's really the only one on the radar right now as far as a watch list between now and the early signing period. So I would keep an eye on that one. But it's hard to get a receiver to be the fifth guy in the class. I mean, that's going to be difficult. I mean, he probably would, without question, be the top guy at Indiana. I haven't seen Tennessee's class, but I'm sure they don't have 4 committed now that are ranked higher than him. So we will see, but that's the one to watch moving forward for the 2026 class for sure.
Talking about news breaking on holidays, every Ohio State beat guy from 2011 just started twitching a little bit. That was the day that Memorial Day 2011 was the day that Jim Tressel officially stepped down and ruined a lot of cookouts among the Ohio State beat. So a little Memorial Day flashback for all the Ohio State football writers out there. You mentioned, obviously, some Indiana guys there. There are some really, really talented receivers in and around Ohio and Indiana and Michigan in the 2027 class as well. We've really been mostly focusing on the 2026 classes on these shows, but since the 2026 wide receiver class seems like the hay is largely in the barn, let's talk real quickly about 3 guys, one in Ohio who's already committed, one in Indiana, and one in Michigan, who are some really, really top of the board kind of talent that Brian Hartline is going to be looking at for 2027.
Yeah, Jameer Brown, I mean, it starts there, the number 1 wide receiver in the country for the class of 2027. Committed to Ohio State. He's taken a few other visits, but if I were a 15, 16-year-old kid, I would do the same thing. All kinds of talk about Oregon for some reason for a kid that has a Block O literally tattooed on his arm. So that's kind of interesting. But having him in the fold early is huge. He's, like I said, the number 1 wide receiver in the country, right down the road in Dayton. And then other local names. I mean, you look up in the state of Michigan, you got Dakota. I believe his last name is pronounced Grand. I know Michigan feels good about their standing with him, and he's a local kid, so I get that. But Brian Hartline's all over that one. I know Berm's talked a lot about him too. And then over in the state of Indiana, and again, it's just so weird having all these guys locally. If Brian Hartline could take 3 for 2027 that are all within the tri-state area, I mean, I think he would gladly do that. But in the state of Indiana, Monshawn Sales, he's an Indianapolis kid. Lawrence North, same high school as Greg Oden and Mike Conley Jr. from back in the day. So you just don't see talent like that in the Midwest in a given class. I mean, it's rare, especially at wide receiver. Usually you're looking down to Florida or California or Texas. So it's kind of a special group of guys for 2027 in the Midwest. They've all been offered. Obviously, one of them is committed already. So I think the 2027 class could be very different. Maybe it'll have a bit more local flavor to it. I don't think anybody's going to sit here now and say Brian Hartline's going to get all 3 of them, but this is Brian Hartline. So, who really knows at this point? But yeah, just a special group of wide receivers in the Midwest for the 27 class.
Yeah, we started the show talking about how you're not necessarily going to be able to just stack 3 of the top 5 wide receivers in the country, and then you kind of get to. But if anyone can do it, Brian Hartline is the guy who can do it. I don't know if he can do it, but if anyone can, it might be Brian Hartline. So we will see whether he can do that. We'll see whether they add a 5th wide receiver to the 2026 class as well. We're going to be talking about all that stuff, as well as some official visits coming up. That starts this week at Ohio State, and it starts the coverage that's been going on for quite a while already at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We've got our whole team of recruiting coverage guys, Mark and Berm, really, really working overtime the last few weeks in the lead up to official visit season and camp season. This is a very, very busy time on the recruiting calendar. Lucky us, we've got 2 of the very best in the business working at the same place, and that place is BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tons of great recruiting coverage. Mark and Kevin just got back from their Southern Swing trip, talking to a bunch of really, really elite prospects all around the South, going from Virginia down into Florida and all the way across to Texas, and lots of points in between as well. You can find all that coverage at BuckeyeHuddle.com and a lot of those interviews as well at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.